Hello, my name's Jade and today I'm going to be going through the books I read in October. I think I read 15 books in October. I'm not quite sure how it happened. Amongst them there's one non-fiction, there's 3 graphic novels, 1 poetry collection, and then 1 short story, and I think all the rest are novels. The first book I finished in October was Radical Acceptance, Awakening the Love That Heals Fear and Shame by Tara Brach. Now, I know that this one also has like a subheading of like using the power of Buddhism and like Buddhist techniques, which I really think this does. It's kind of along the self-help vein, and it talks about how and why we should accept ourselves. Wow, and it's really throwing my white balance out of whack. So let's do this quickly. If you have never read any kind of self-help, personal development type books, I think this is a good one to start with. I think it's relatively approachable and accessible. There are a lot of things in here that I've heard elsewhere, so it combines a lot of stuff I've already heard, but it does frame in slightly different ways. It really reminded me of Eckhart Tolle's book The Power of Now. The way they both talk about there being like a greater sense of something, even if it's not necessarily a god per se, but being tapped into this bigger system of life, and it's something I think Elizabeth Gilbert talks about in Eat, Pray, Love. In fact, Tara calls it her beloved, and I'm like, hang on, I've heard this before somewhere. Where have I heard this before? And it's Elizabeth Gilbert in Eat, Pray, Love. I think she has a lot of compassion and understanding in her take, and so that's one of the reasons why I think it's a really good one to have under your belt. I do think it's one with the loftier ones where we do talk about the beloved and these big spiritual beliefs. In Eckhart's book, I found it as well, where it's just, what, like, unless you've experienced it yourself, it kind of just sounds like, yeah, right, like, what does this even mean? Not a lot of it has stuck with me, I will say that. Like, I've forgotten most of it already, whereas like Eckhart's book really stuck with me and it was much shorter. I don't know, I feel kind of middling about this one. I think it's valuable, but I don't necessarily think it's a must read for me personally. Like, it's not impacted me that much, but then again, maybe someday I'll read it and I'll change my mind, reread it. I did listen to the audiobook of this one. It was narrated by Cassandra Campbell, and one thing I will say is that she does very much have that like self-help guidance feel to her voice, and that kind of really made it hard for me to like concentrate on what was being said. I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10, an 8 out of 10. And then next up is the first novel, and that is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is a highly anticipated release by a lot of people. I really wanted to get to it this year, and I did it. I've not read a Leigh book in a minute. The last one I read from her, I'm pretty sure, is Ninth House, or maybe one of the Grisha. I've read all the Grisha, so maybe it was one of them. Whatever came out most recently that's not Hellbent, basically. So we're following, I remember googling how you pronounce her name, Lucia. I'm so sorry. She is a maid. She has magic. The people in the household that she works for find out that she has magic and want just to kind of start exploiting her for it, and then more powerful people get wind and it escalates. That's all I want to say, because it is a bit of a slow burn, this one. You can Google the synopsis if you want to know more, but I always like knowing less before I go into books. It does escalate. We do end up with like a kind of games trials situation in here, which was really fun. And I in general had a lot of fun with this one. It takes place in Spain, in Madrid, in like the 1600s, the 1500s, somewhere around there, like around the Spanish Inquisition times. And it has a really dark, macabre vibe. I read online that like Leigh could only write it at night, and you can feel that. Like, when I was reading it during the daytime, it felt wrong. Just the atmosphere was so sumptuous, and all of the motifs and the characters, it all lended really well to the vibe and the tone of this book. Nicely packaged and just a nice place to be. Very like escapism. I was completely transported away whenever I read it. I also found it to be really, really readable. It had really short chapters. I love short chapters. I just flew through it and it was so easy to read. What else? Addicting, entertaining. I was completely immersed. The atmosphere was so good. And the ending, I really liked the ending. I just think like the whole thing kind of, it felt like we could have stayed there longer. I came out of it thinking like I would have been happily had like another 50 pages. Like, I didn't want to leave it. I didn't feel ready yet. I felt like I'd gone through it all too quickly. And then I heard someone else online say the vibe of the book, it kind of almost suits a slower feeling to it. It's almost like the Night Circus feeling, where it's just slow and curious and macabre. I really liked this one, if you couldn't tell. The dialogue felt really old-fashioned without feeling too stiff or caricature-y. Relationships and the characters were really layered and interesting, and everyone was multifaceted. Everyone had multiple loyalties and incentives. The only thing that's come to mind that I could critique this one a little bit is that we bounce around different people's perspectives. I think it's third person, but we go like between different close narration third person into different people's minds within the same chapter. It's not like you'll stick with one person throughout the whole chapter, and for the most part you do, or like for a section at least, but sometimes you do bleed into others, but sometimes we would bleed from one character to another one and back again so quickly that it felt very much like it served the author rather than the story. For the most part, I thought it was really well done. I was really entertained. I just loved the vibe. I wanted to stay here for so long. I really, really enjoyed it. I had so much investment in it. I was so attached to it. Oh, there's so many more things I want to say, but I don't want to because it's so mysterious and it's such a great part of the appeal. The characters were just so good. I completely like rooted for and understood Louisia every step of the way. I think I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I really want to give it a 9. I'm just not 100% committed to it, so we're going to give it an 8.5. Okay, quite a few of the upcoming books I read during a reading vlog that I'm going to link to down below. And so I go into a lot of depth of my thoughts of these books there, and because I've read 15 books this month, I'm going to try and go through these next 5 somewhat quicker. The first book was Foe by Ian Reid. You might have heard of this author from I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is a sci-fi mystery. I thought it was horror. I think it is labelled as horror. I can see it, but it's more a sci-fi mystery, I would say. Psychological thriller-esque vibes. There's another one where I don't want to give too much of the premise because it's so mysterious. We're following Henrietta and Junior. Junior primarily, we're in his perspective, it's first person. And they live kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I kind of picture it like Southern America. They don't really get many people out there. It's very isolated. And then one night, a car randomly shows up to their house with some news. And that's all I'm going to say. I theorized like a maniac while reading this one. The problem is I went into it knowing much more than that. Because of that, I was able to guess everything exactly. I mean, on the one hand, you know, when you get to the end of the book sometimes and you figure out what's going on, you think, oh my god, if I reread that again, it would be a completely different experience. I kind of got to do that the first time round because I got to see all the clues and all the things that I probably wouldn't have picked up had I not had this in my head. All of the themes and the topics, because I knew what was happening and I could kind of see the direction the author was trying to push us in, I picked them all up instantly. So on the one hand, it's kind of frustrating because I didn't get that like fun bamboozlement, but on the other hand, I could see how cleverly done it was, and I think it was so well written. The writing's pretty sparse, it lends to it so well, and I still really enjoyed it. I found it really entertaining. I was thinking about it all day long. I have audiobooks this one as well. It was narrated by Jack Roy, who did a fantastic job. I would really recommend the audiobook. The thing that haunts me though is I then watched the film with my mum and she was immediately able to guess what was happening, and I'm wondering just, is it somewhat predictable given the themes of this? I don't know. I want to say no, you know, but maybe it is. I really wanted to annotate it. I have so many notes of like all the different like motifs and like things that came up, like the bugs and the ducks, the symbolism behind them. I think I really want to give it a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it and I thought it was so clever. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Screw it. No one could stop me. And next up was another sci-fi book, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is one I've been wanting to read for a really, really long time. This is just so beautiful. I'm never gonna get over it. Another mysterious one. There is an area of land sectioned off. It is like a force field. Area X. They keep sending in these expeditions. They being Southern Reach. They're like this little area of government that are to do with all things Area X. They're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. These expeditions keep getting sent in. Pretty much everyone dies, or they come back weird, and they just like show up unannounced, completely unannounced. Like they're just literally one day in their house and it was like, how the hell did you get here? Weird things are happening in Area X, obviously. We don't even really know how or why it's there. Following, like, I can't remember, the 12th, the 13th expedition. It's of all women this time. It's one of their little experiments to see what's going on. We're following one of those women who are sent into Area X. I had such high hopes for this one. It has so much hype and I love the idea behind it, and I think for the most part it's well executed. The writing is really solid. It's kind of sparse. It's not sparse. There's quite a lot of detail actually. It's at times too much. Like I found it really hard to picture certain things. But what I mean is it's quite bare bones and it's not too emotional, it's not too flowery, it's very simple and to the point, but again that really works for this book. Quite speculative. Our character spends a lot of this book isolated, and so all she can do is theorize and she can't prove any of her theories, partnered with the fact that what's going on in Area X is very weird. It's really weird. It's quite eerie. It's creepy. I wouldn't say scary. I again thought this was going to be horror and it didn't quite meet my expectations. But it's all very abstract and strange and sometimes described in like a lot of detail. Sometimes we don't actually see what's going on. But those two things together, and it's not very concrete, like it's all just really elusive. And then there's also the fact that the main character, she has a certain disposition. She's of a certain mentality. And so at times I was like, well, why do we even care then? The first half, not a lot happened, but I was really interested and I read it really quickly. In the second half, the slowness, the lack of anything happening just really got to me. And I struggled with it much more. There are like maybe 3 or 4 exciting plot points and the rest is just like her wandering around thinking. I feel conflicted because I want to love it. I love the idea, the premise. I love the vibes and the atmosphere. I think for the most part it's really well written, but it's just too slow and too elusive for me. And I love weird, mysterious stuff. So I just don't, it was too slow. It was too little. I don't understand the hype. I'm so upset. I'm gonna give it like a 5 out of 10 because I feel for every good point I have about it, I have a bad point. I really loved the first half. I found the second half really boring. And then next up we have All's Well by Mona Awad, another horror. Are you sensing the theme? The vlog was me trying to read horror books. It's my first Mona Awad book and it's one of her like less popular. I had to like find it. I know that Bunny and Rouge are her more popular books and I definitely want to read both of those. But I really liked this one. So in this one we're following, what's her name? Miranda. Of course. Am I right? That line is thrown around so many times and it's definitely for effect, but my god. She has a lot of chronic pain. She had an injury. She used to be an actress. She fell off the stage. She never healed quite right and so she has a lot of chronic pain. Her life's pretty difficult at the minute, to be honest. She's not loving her job. She's a director at a college, high school. I feel like it's a college, but I'm not entirely sure. Somewhat recent-ish got divorced. This injury's really had a big effect on her life. She's not in a good place at the beginning of this book. She's putting on a play. She decides it's going to be All's Well. The students don't really want to do All's Well. They want to do Macbeth. And then she meets some people and weird things start happening. Again, it's one of those where you know more than that. I think in the blurb says more than that, but it takes like 50, 100 pages for that to really kick into gear. Again, it's quite slow, but this one was really entertaining and it's so much more about the ideas and the topics and the things it investigates than the actions per se. The actions are really there to just like bounce back the ideas. I feel like dash of magical realism in here. It is creepy at times. It feels like a literary-ish, but it also, because it's got that dash of magical, of all those horror books I read for that vlog, it feels the most like genre fiction-y. But also I think it feels like that because it's really entertaining and it's really funny and it's really well written. We're completely like submersed in our character's head the whole time. I completely understood her perspective. I felt really bad for her. Again, the only thing I'll say about it is I kind of wish we just had a couple extra pages on the end, just a couple extra pages. We don't fully know the resolution, and I understand that she doesn't want it like tied up in a bow, and it was a good place to stop. I just wanted it for me. Do I have anything else on my notes that I've not said? The exploration of chronic pain and horror elements went really well together. All of the themes, topics, motifs and symbols complemented each other in a fascinating and layered way. It was readable and funny and I enjoyed every moment of it. Okay, the more it went on as well, the more unhinged it became, the more like invested I became. I really want to give this one a 9 out of 10 as well, you know. It's either an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. Oh, I listened to the audiobook of this one as well, and it was narrated by Sophie and Moss, and I think she narrates all of Mona Awad's books, and she did such a good job. Another audiobook I would highly recommend. So next up is Authority by Jeff Vandermeer, book 2 in the Southern Reach trilogy. So the second book to the Annihilation trilogy. I don't know if I introduced the trilogy properly before. I wasn't expecting this one to be so much longer than Annihilation, and I felt it. I kind of have very similar thoughts with this one than I did Annihilation. It was really slow. Not a lot happened. But at least in Annihilation we had the tense, eerie weirdness of what was going on, whereas in this one we're in Southern Reach, so we're in the government facility. It's a completely different perspective, and I enjoyed that perspective. I liked our main character, but he wasn't compelling enough to like make up for all the other faults I found with it. In both of them is like a more human side, and we get these like flashbacks from their past lives, and I think it really worked in Annihilation. It actually made me quite emotional. It's one of the things that I liked most about Annihilation. But in this one, other than like letting us know our main character better, it didn't lend to like the story overall and like how important of a piece of the puzzle is he in this. In this point, he's kind of indispensable. I think it's setting up for the third book. I just didn't care. Although I liked him, I didn't care about his past as much. It felt a little heavy-handed. If the writing was really interesting and experimental, if the tone was really intense and thick and it was really immersive, if the characters were really funny and entertaining and enjoyable, if there was something more to this, I think I could have really liked it. It really felt like a spy novel. We're trying to figure things out, but with very little clues. It is interesting the fact that in Annihilation we're from an outsider's perspective, and in this one we're someone who's like, he's new to the job, so he's learning all this stuff alongside of us, but we're getting the like a different perspective. Both have different pieces of the puzzle, and I think the third book puts them together. So I think, and I said this before I went into this one, I thought like there's so much stuff about this that I could love, and I thought I was gonna like this one better, and in fact I kind of think I liked it less just because it was too long. If it was shorter, maybe it wouldn't have been so much of a problem, but it was just too slow and not enough happened. Really bored a lot, and like even at the end when it started getting really, and it did get exciting and weird at the end, like the last 50 pages it started getting slow again. I was like, are you kidding me? Like this is the climax and it's being spread over like tens of pages. There's a lot of stuff in here that in theory I should like, so I'm really hoping I like the third book better than I like the first two. I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10 for the exact same reasons of Annihilation. I kind of feel like I like Annihilation better. I think it's more well done, but then I like our main character in this one and it's really making me biased. I'm really upset. I really wanted to like that trilogy. Okay, we have an intermission from the books I read during that reading vlog to talk about some graphic novels, and that is volumes 5 through 7 of Something is Killing the Children. This is why is this volume 6? Volume 5, volume 6 and volume 7. So this is quite a way through of the series. I'm going to link to the video where I talk about the first one in this series, volume 1, in the description to give you the synopsis. Long story short, there are monsters, they're killing children, there are these adults, part of the secret order, that can kill them. Go watch the video if you want to know more. So volume 4 in this series was a standalone, and it was kind of like a prequel, and then number 5 marked the start of like a new trilogy. It looks like there's like a trilogy and then a standalone and then a trilogy and then a standalone, and I really like that format. It keeps it really interesting, and I really liked volume 4. Volume 5 was a reread for me. I enjoyed it, I wasn't obsessed with it, and I kind of my feel of this trilogy as a whole. I liked the story, I liked our new characters, I thought the premise was interesting. Things are gearing up in an interesting way. They're setting up for like a climax. I can see the very beginnings of it, and that really excites me, so I'm really excited to see where the series goes. I'm really glad to be up to date. I think another volume comes out this year, and so I'm definitely gonna like get on that before it gets too far behind like these three did. Like, I really like this series, but it's probably not one of my favourite series. It's like a solid 7 out of 10 for me, like a 3.5 stars. And that really reflects in these three. I enjoyed them, I wasn't obsessed, but I had a good time and it was really easy to read. And I think it's a fun series. I really like the premise, I like the art. So I'd give like a 7 out of 10 for all three of these unanimously. If I had to pick a favourite, it's probably 7, just because of this, like, the showdown is so exciting. The last book I read as part of that reading vlog is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Another really hyped book that I've been wanting to get to for, as soon as it came out, it interested me. It's about 2 wives, 2 women who are married to each other. One of them goes under the sea on an expedition. This is what she does as part of her job, and she's supposed to be gone for like 3 weeks, and she's gone for like 6 months, and then when she comes back, she's not quite right. Something's off. We split between their 2 perspectives, and the mystery in this one is really mysterious. Not everything is resolved. There's a lot of unresolved stuff by the time you get to the end of the book. Like, some of the main mystery stuff and I think it's really well done. I would have been happy to know a little bit more, but it's okay. I think it's done for a purpose, and it is just one of those like mysterious, weird books, and I'm okay with that. It's really well written. There's a lot of like body imagery in here, and it lends to the themes and what's going on in here really, really well. It feels very literary. It's very much about their relationship and like about grieving someone. Almost has normal people vibes-ish, if it was like really weird. The wife who didn't go under the sea, Mary, we're in her perspective much more than Leah's. When we're in Leah's perspective, we're like going to her when she is under the sea, and it's for like short periods of time. Yeah, my thoughts on this one and my emotions indeed are very jumbled. I enjoyed it. I don't think I loved it as much as most people did. I think that thing happened where the hype was too much. By the time I went into it, I knew too much of like other people's thoughts, and so I had certain expectations in my head. It reminded me of a lot of when I read Pyrenees, and I was like, this is really good and quirky and cute and well done, but it's not like mind-blowing. But that's because before going into it, I'd heard so much hype. I think the same thing happened here, where in theory I thought I was gonna absolutely love it, and I did really enjoy it, and it is haunting me. The more as time goes on, I like it more and more, and so there's definitely the potential for me to reread it and like again change my mind. Okay, let's try and collect some thoughts. It's undeniably well written. The motifs and the metaphors all work together. How many times have I said motifs and metaphors in this video? I don't know what else how else to describe them though. Like the abstract thoughts, the comparisons it draws, the symbols that come up again and again, and the way they're used, it's all just very cohesive, and it lends well to the thoughts and the theories it's ruminating on. There were some passages though that kind of felt like they were semi-formed to me, like I didn't fully understand why. We talk about this mostly to do with Mary and like her ruminating on her past and like her mum and stuff. Sometimes I was just kind of like, but why do we need to know this? Because it's so short. Like it's one of those books where everything it has must have a reason, but it could be something deeper, it could be something that I've not picked up. I didn't necessarily hate it, I just wished I'd got it. The emotions I felt were like none other I felt. It kind of made me feel a bit sick, to be honest. On the whole, I just don't know, like, is it an 8? Is it an 8.5? Is it a 9? Is it 10? It could be any of these things. I just don't know what I think. But like I said, it keeps haunting me and I keep thinking about it, and my opinion is positive. So right now I'm going to say 9 out of 10. I cannot wait to read Private Rights. That's why I've like sampled the very beginning of it, and I'm hooked already. That's one I want to get to at the beginning of next year for sure. Next up, I'm going to quickly mention the poetry collection I read. It was self-published. She's Magic and Midnight Lace by Anne Marie Alazer. Very much that kind of collected thoughts, almost like note-taking style of poetry that I know is really popular right now. Kind of Instagram poetry-ish. Me, the rhymes and the rhythms just weren't what I personally like in poetry. There would be a certain rhythm or a certain rhyme structure, and then it wouldn't be that. So it is very much that like collected thought style, which is fine. It's just, I don't think it's for me. It has a very certain atmosphere and vibe. The language that's used is very much of a certain feeling, and I did like that. I know there are a lot of people out there that did really like this. Okay. Next up, we have Skulduggery Pleasant, The Haunted House on Hollow Hill by Derek Landy. This is like a side quest in phase 3 of the Skulduggery Pleasant series. I'm going to link down a video where I break down Skulduggery Pleasant. Did any of that make sense? That came out so garbled in my head. I'm linking in a video in the description where I explain what Skulduggery Pleasant is. Because this is like, we're on phase 3 of a really long series. This is basically like an Agatha Christie mystery in a haunted old house but Skulduggery version. I don't think so much in phase 1. I think in phase 1 all the like the side stories and side quests and like the extra material we got was really interesting and fun, and I really enjoyed it. I think in phase 2 and 3 something's happened where they just feel sillier to me, and that's such a stupid thing to say because these are literally children's books. Like, I'm not the target demographic at all, but I really feel it in the side quests. I don't know why I keep calling them side quests, like, you know, the side books. The main books always have like this really polished feeling to me, and in these ones, some of the humour, some of the way the characters, like, it's kind of like he can be a little bit more liberal with it. He can like be a bit more experimental. Again, I'm not the target demographic. I just don't like them as much per se. But I laughed out loud quite a lot in the beginning. The mystery I didn't necessarily see coming. I think the vibe, like the premise of it was really fun. I did have a fun time. Like, I think on my radar it's probably like a 6-ish out of 10. I always feel really bad when I don't love a Skulduggery book because it's like one of my absolute favourite series. So we'll move swiftly on to the short story collection. Night Side of the River, Ghost Stories by Jeanette Winterson, which I actually got to meet Jeanette at Hay Festival, and she did a talk about this, and she read out one of the stories in here, and it's been like hanging around in the back of my mind all year long. I was so excited to finally get to this. I knew I wanted to save it for Halloween. It's a short story collection full of stories. Every now and then there's like, she'll have her own little thoughts because it's broken up into different sections. Devices, places, people, and visitations. So she'll have like a little section where she talks about like visitations in general, and she talks about like ghost stories within her life and within her family. It's really nice. I could listen to her talk all day. She's such a fascinating, funny, like down-to-earth person. I've only ever read from her Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, and I read it ages ago for uni, so I'm definitely gonna read more Jeanette Winterson now. All of them were really well written, really well structured. She's been writing for a very long time. She's very good at it. She's written a lot of stuff. What I also really liked about this one is the variety in here. We have a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different tones, types of ghost stories. You know, we read from the perspective of the ghost. More melancholic ones, there are funny ones, there are silly ones, there are ones that have like more of like a societal impact. There are more traditional like ye olde feeling ghost stories. There are some that are more experimental. There's a really good variety in here. And so if you want like a short story collection all around the theme of ghost stories, I would definitely recommend this one. Other than maybe this one, I don't know if this is a new contender, but up until this point my favourite short story collection has been The Haunting Season, which is another ghost story, short story collection. So maybe this is something I need to explore more. I love this cover as well. Complete side note. How stunning is it? They're like, this is the river and then this is the blackness in the tree. It's so good. I listened to the audiobook of this one as well. It was narrated by Jeanette and Vicky Licorice, and Jeanette's sections were really great. Vicky was okay too. I could listen to Jeanette all day, like I said before. I'm going to quickly go through my favourites. Were Apparition, which I think is the first one, and it really hooked me. Ghost in the Machine, which was just wild. A lot of banter between the wife and her dead husband. They're like Southern Americans, and it's just it's a hoot. It's a blast. I wasn't expecting it at all. We have The Door, which I found really interesting. No Ghost Story, which is the one that she read at the event, and I just love. That one is actually like a two-parter. There's a story that corresponds with it, and I did really like the second part too, but we're reading from the point of view of the dead person, and I didn't audiobook that one because Vicky narrated it and I wanted it to be interpreted in my own way. And the talk of death, it gets to me, and it got to me. If it wasn't for that, I'm sure that would have been one of my favourites as well. And then Canterville Ghost, which was another really fun one that I wasn't expecting. I had a lot of fun with this one. It's at the minimum an 8 out of 10, if not an 8.5 out of 10. I would highly recommend it if it sounds interesting. And I completely forgot to mention Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. This is a graphic novel. It's on Halloween in a pumpkin patch with two best friends. It's their last year. I read it every single year. This is my 5th time reading it. I find it really cute. I think it's adorable. It makes me feel alive. I love it. It's like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I'm not going to say anything more because I read it literally every year. So go back to any of my October wrap-ups within the last 5 years and I'll mention it. And then lastly, the short story I read this month, which very fitting, was another ghost story, is The Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde. This is my second Oscar Wilde. I have read The Picture of John Grey back in 6th form and I really didn't like it. It's put me off reading anything from him since. But I really liked this. It was not what I was expecting at all. I saw it on a whim in a Waterstones. Me and my friend both really wanted it. This was the last copy in Bristol. Sorry, Chrissy. I'm going to read to you the back of it because it very much sets the tone. There is no such thing, sir, as a ghost, and I guess the laws of nature are not going to be suspended for the British aristocracy. It's very witty, I will say. I don't want to say too much about it because the surprise is really what makes it a delight. It balances like the humour and like the eerie creepiness really well. I listened to this one via audiobook as well. There are quite a few of them. The one I listened to was narrated by Rupert Degas, and there's like sound effects and stuff that were really fun. I'd highly recommend it. If you want a little ghost story, something a little bit different, I could not recommend it more. I find it really entertaining. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Whew! That was a lot. That was a lot. I am tired. It was a good month. A really good month. There was a lot that I really enjoyed this month. I tried a lot of new things. I feel very proud of myself. I feel very accomplished. It really helped my Goodreads go. I'd love to hear if you've read any of these and you have any opinions. Please let me know what they are in the comments. What was your favourite book that you read in October? And that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening / night. My name's Jade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye!